Hello, everyone, and welcome back to hockeyprospects.com YouTube channel. I'm Jérôme Bérubé. This is Brad Allen, and this is another video previewing the 2026 NHL Draft. We have done so far the goalie video. We have done the Russian class. We have done some underrated prospects. We have done what else have we done? We have
There's
answered some question, some difference of rankings between us and
Mhm.
the rest of the planet, I guess. We explained some of our rankings in a previous video. So today we're gonna take a look at the top forwards of the draft. So we're gonna take a look at one, two, three, four, six forwards that we have ranked. So, Brad, let's start with the number one ranked player by hockeyprospect.com, Viggo Bjorck. Controversial? I don't know. That's no controversy. There's no controversy with Hockey Prospect. We're all in agreement on that one. So you can start, Brad. Tell us your take on Viggo Bjorck and why we have him as a number one ranked prospect. I can tell you, nobody else has him number one, so it's us.
True, a bit scary from that perspective if we get it wrong, but we had to go with our evaluation, our gut instincts, and how we look at this crop. I know for some of you listening, it's like, how in the world could Viggo Bjorck be one? McKenna's more talented. Stenberg, better track record in the SHL in terms of his production. They look neck and neck the worlds. You could argue Stenberg was better in some of those viewings, and I'm sure some of you saw those. So, long story short, we think that there's 7 specific players in this class that you could really argue could be in the top slot. You can make arguments all year for them. And that was the 3 defensemen we talked about in our defensive breakdown there with Verhoff, Reed, and Carrolls. And then the forwards who we're going to be discussing here, including Bjorck, Stenberg, Malhotra, McKenna. So that's really the core 7. And all throughout the season, we discussed those 7 in the top slots and went back and forth. Now, the main reasons why Viggo Bjorck is in this top slot are both psychological and based off of what we saw on the ice. Because we're going to go into the psychological profile of some of these kids a bit more than what you're used to, because we think it matters more than people think. I understand with the NHL right now and in previous seasons, since the NHL's inception, there are certain staff that don't focus or emphasize the mental foundation of a player to the same degree we do. So first, like, I'm sure a lot of you looking at the situation in Edmonton right now with Mike Babcock, right? He is clear he's a sociopath, yet teams are still willing to hire him because his coaching, his pedigree and ability supersedes the risk with the sociopathy for the players. And we can draw from that from a scouting perspective because we also have to evaluate risk with players. And when it comes to Viggo Bjorck, that's where he has a diamond-edged floor in an incredibly chaotic and unsafe top 10 where nobody has any sort of consensus, despite what you've seen publicly with McKenna and Stenberg. The ceiling here is elite, the floor here is elite. This player is guaranteed to play. He is guaranteed to play. The question is, to what degree will he move up in a lineup? Obviously, we have him number 1 overall, and that's because Jérôme, as you know, the last 2.5 to 3 months of his SHL campaign, we saw him go from a winger to a center, which is his natural position in Djurgården, and he was eating 20 to 22 minutes a night, playing the number 1 role and line driving and dictating play in a way we had never seen a 17-year-old in a top Euro league do before. So when it's the head-to-head between Stenberg and him, I've seen a lot of back and forth about their performances. We would argue that Bjorck was more consistent throughout the U20s before Stenberg came on in the medal rounds and the rounds that mattered more. And then when you look at him in the SHL play, we thought Stenberg started better. We thought Bjorck ended better. Bjorck is the natural center, and Bjorck is younger. So those are all enormous factors into our evaluation as to why we think Bjorck is better than Stenberg. In terms of McKenna, we think there is a tremendous amount of more risk than there is with Bjorck in terms of living up to their potential. And this goes back to the psychological profile. So with Viggo Bjorck, when we were first coming into the season, Jérôme, we were talking to a former scout in Djurgården that knows him very well. And one thing he told me was that, Brad, you got to look for this kid because he's literally the most impressive person I've ever met off the ice at his age. I was like, well, okay. And this person, as you know, Jérôme, who profiles and talks to a tremendous amount of young junior players coming up. So that put me on notice. And then I remember when we first saw him in the SHL, one of his viewings, he was literally drawing up the plays for his coach in the SHL as a 17-year-old during the timeout. And I was like, what? You don't see that. That's extremely abnormal. So that kind of backed up and validated what the former Djurgården scout told us. And we realized it wasn't him just trying to prop up the player. It was really like, no, this kid is something very unique, very special. Now, if you look at him at the end of the season, who was enamored with him at the Worlds? Jerome? Which player? Do you remember which player hyped him up in media?
Sidney Crosby did.
It was Sidney Crosby. You don't have to take it from us, everyone. If Sidney Crosby is pretty impressed by a kid coming up at the world level, you know, right? This is a very unique player profile psychologically. He has everything to look for. Natural maturity off the ice, maturity in spades on the ice. He plays one of the best 200-foot games available in this draft. The only, I'd say, you make some arguments for Seamus Ignatavicius, Caleb Malhotra, Oliver Suvanto. Those are some of the other names where you look at them from their 200-foot game perspective. They can match Bjorck to a degree. But I think one of the best ways I can characterize this player, I'll let you break him down, Jerome, but the best way I think we can characterize this player is the following. If he was 6'1" right now, slam dunk number one, not even a question. Like nobody, I think, would be questioning that. From our staff perspective, there's no chance anybody would question it. I think from an NHL perspective, most people wouldn't question it. This is the beauty of that. He thinks he's 6'5", and he's way, way, way physically more mature than people think. This player understands leverages to his advantage. He understands how to interact dynamically with resistance. So he knows how to fall out of contact points. He knows how to use his lower center of gravity to his advantage, much like Sidney Crosby, out of turns. He knows how to create speed differentials like Braden Point so he remains slippery. He knows how to switch his gears depending on the sequence so that he can downshift, upshift, and make sure that he throws off the defenseman so he can find his options. He has all those beautiful, subtle details that are necessary to make sure his translation can be optimized at that size. So, Jerome, throw it back to you. What impressed you with his skill set?
Well, we just mentioned Sidney Crosby. It is so obvious when you watch Bjorck play that Sidney Crosby is his favorite player because he seems to have copied everything. He has watched Crosby like a hawk, and he's like, I'm going to copy everything Crosby does. Even their frame, even if Bjorck is only 5'9", he's a strong 5'9". That's one thing we heard at the World Championship. A lot of NHL people were a bit blown away how strong and strong physically he was, off ice. You think of 5'9", you're like, oh, he's gonna have, that kid is he's a strong kid. And you watch him in the SHL this season with Djurgården, like he won a lot of puck battles against against men that were like 10, 15 years older than him. So he's a dog. He brings it the compete level. You just have to look at Stankoven in the playoff, Zach Benson in the playoff. That's the mindset that Bjorck plays like. So a few more things. Maybe we can compare him to Stenberg. There's always context to everything, and mostly like I'm going to bring some stats. So there's always context, but if you compare Bjorck's 16 years old season to Stenberg's 16 years old season, Stenberg only played 10 games in G20 at 16. So the context is Florida is usually they're a bit slow at bringing their prospect playing G20 at 16. So, but he still had 9 points in 10 games, which is really good. He had a great U17 hockey challenge as well. What did Bjorck do that year? His 16 years old season, he broke the record for points by a U17 player in that league. I said broke, but he shattered it by 20 plus points. So that's really impressive. You compare their 17 years old season, Stenberg was half the season in G20, the other half in the SHL. Um, he had about, I think, 3 points in 25 games in the SHL. The ice time was not always there. Uh, we just saw what Bjork did in the SHL this season. Play number one center on Djurgården, number one power play, number one PK. At in the second half of the season, played 20 plus minutes in most games that he played. His attention to details is exceptional. Um, I remember one game they're killing a 5-on-3. They have one forward on the ice, and it's him, and he's 17 years old. You're like what am I watching? Like what? It's I've never really seen that before. So and he's incredibly smart too offensively. So maybe Stenberg in the NHL puts more points on the board. Maybe possibly more likely McKenna will put more points on the board. But I think one lesson I think people need to learn is it's not because someone gets more points that he's a better player. You know, there's nobody in hockey who would take, I don't know, Panarin on their team instead of Patrice Bergeron. If you have an elite two-way forward who's a center, you're always going to take that over. Even if there's like a 20 points difference, 25 points difference, it doesn't matter. Those players will perform better in the playoff than your one-dimensional scorer like Panarin. And we have seen Panarin play in the playoff, Brad. It's
never come together for him. A couple games he'll have some dynamic performances.
He's super talented, but
Yeah.
I always value those more complete player. They have so much more value for me. So that's why I think we really like Bjork as our number one guy if we compare to Stenberg, and if we compare to McKenna. Even though maybe they might get more points than him, we don't care. We really do not care. Whoever is the coach that's gonna get Viggo Bjorck in the NHL, he's gonna absolutely love him. Like, it's like coaching Nico Hischier. I mentioned Bergeron. Um, New Jersey took Hischier number one. Okay, McCarr went after him. Okay, fine. But I don't think New Jersey is regretting that pick whatsoever. Like, he's their captain. He's the leader of that team. Even though, his production is 70 points, I would say on average. I don't think they're regretting that pick because he like Bjork, he will sacrifice some offense for defense. Very unselfish player, Bjork is. And you mentioned our scout friend from Djurgården, who's no longer with Djurgården, but I remember he told me one time, he's like, whatever you think of Bjork as a hockey player, like on ice, he's 10 times better off ice. He's super well-liked. His dedication to his craft, his dedication to the gym, flawless. Like, it's impeccable. You're never gonna have a problem with him. Everyone likes him. And people are a bit maybe obsessed with the 5'9" thing, and we don't care if he stays 5'9". But his brother Wilson is 6 feet tall, and yet he was a bit of a late bloomer as far as his height. His dad is almost 6'3", so we're not saying Vigo is gonna grow, but if he does, I mean, even better. But we're pretty confident, even at 5'9", that he is. If hockeyprospect.com was an NHL team and we had the number one pick, he would be our pick, because we think overall he's just going to bring so much to the table that McKenna will not be able to. We get it. Like, we're going to talk about McKenna. McKenna playmaking is, elite of the elite, basically. He's going to, make your power play so much better with him on the ice. But we just love the overall game of Bjork. And there's some runway also. He's not a finished product. So there's a lot of good things going for him. No issue with off ice. He works hard on and off the ice. He plays in every situation. Yeah, so that's that's I could go on and on. We just love that player. It's really like the type of hockey player we love at Hockey Prospect, and so that's why he's number one. Brad, you want to add anything here so we finish here on Bjork?
Sure. Like, look at Braden Point, right? Some of how Braden Point generates his offense is almost identical to what Viggo Bjorck does. And again, it goes back to the skating. Not the fastest skater, not the greatest toolkit in straight lines. I'm not talking about Point, I'm talking about Bjork here. But Braden Point also in his draft season wasn't where he is as a natural skater now. It took time, right? And that's one of the bets we're making because, as Jerome just mentioned, more runway, right? This kid is a March birthday. And usually players who are super dedicated off the ice, they're the ones that really surprise you long term in terms of just how far they go. And that's the case with this player. So what we think is that there will be another gear to his open ice skating, his north-south skating. He's already slippery. He already has good edge work. He already has good posture. You know, it's not like he doesn't have clean and efficient skating mechanics. He's just not the most explosive skater yet. Now,
He got better, though. He got better.
It did get better too. That's a good point. Throughout the season, it did develop. And when he went back to his natural center position in Djurgården, it really stood out more because he had to eat more ice. He had to control the middle. And it really started dictating with it. There's a couple of contrasting aspects too. So like he will absolutely go Braden Point 101 and just use the skating base, attack skating, and crisscross the opposition. He can move east-west. He can go north-south. He can find multi-directional options. He can create 50-50 options for himself between high-percentage shooting and lateral setups. But he can also do what a lot of other prospects can't do in this draft, and that's recognize when he should actually pass a puck relative to continue to drive possession. And I think that is a foundational difference between him, Stenberg, and McKenna. Stenberg drives possession occasionally too long. I'm sure some of you saw that with Lucas Raymond there. They were both kind of driving possession too much. Or Bjorck. Viggo Bjorck in that tournament was not as good as he was when he was the guy for Djurgården as the number one center. That's when Bjorck was trying to show and dictate more what he is and take over games, but he was doing it in a way that was more clean and efficient. Where Stenberg, he'd drive possession a little too long for his liking, just like Raymond. McKenna, same thing. To Jerome's point, McKenna, remarkable playmaker, one of the most brilliant playmakers we've ever scouted, for sure. Like, legitimately, some of the passes you're talking, I remember watching Wayne Gretzky in his prime live. I've seen Gretzky in his prime live. Some of his passes, you're like, what is going on? How are you thinking like this? Same thing with McKenna. However, I bring up the playmaking because, yes, McKenna is probably the most brilliant technical passer we've ever seen. Guess what? His passing rates were more inefficient in college than Bjork's rates in the SHL. That's how impressive Viggo Bjorck is when it comes to his playmaking efficiency. He's not going to be able to do some of the wizardry as often as McKenna, not as dynamic with his handling rates as McKenna, but man, is he ever more efficient with what he is and what he brings to the table. And if you poll 10 NHL scouts, as Jerome said, which is the player in the last decade that's the most impressive them? Most of them would say Anze Kopitar, Patrice Bergeron over some of these other flash and dash players. It's just the nature of it. The two-way game isn't as sexy as a highlight reel. That's why Gavin McKenna has been hyped as he is. That's why he was given this generational label. It's because people put on a 20-minute reel and watch them turn players into pretzels and turn them inside out and make some astonishing plays. They're like, oh, this kid's going to be unstoppable. That's not how it works most of the time. There's some real contrast there. Like, Viggo Bjorck's the smartest player in the draft, period. He's the smartest player, one of the smartest players we've ever scouted. Like, I think he's smarter than Zach Benson. I think he's smarter, and Zach Benson's like the smartest player I can remember the last couple of years before that. So there's just levels to this in terms of the intelligence and just the maturity. In terms of absolute offense, yes, he's not the highest end goal scorer, but he's not as poor as what he showed when he missed 7 breakaways in a row with U20s. It's not that bad. So that's the problem with international competition. There's certain performances that are going to stick with you because that's what I'm sure a lot of you have seen. It's the SHL for us. We keep coming back. The last 2.5 months of the SHL season is where we really thought of him as the true number one in this draft. And I'll be honest with all of you, we got lucky in a sense. the player we really think is number one, it turned out that nobody has him number one, and then at the Worlds, I'll be honest, I kind of thought we might lose him a bit, but then he defaulted and deferred to his line mates a bit more, and I think that kept him a bit hidden because you'd have to see him in Djurgården and really know what was going on. Kind of reminds me, Jerome, a little bit like Mort Seider for us. Or Seider, he got to the World Championships. I remember talking to Mark and like, oh, Mark, we're going to lose him. He's way too good here. People are going to find out. Nobody found out. That's how I feel about Viggo Bjorck. Nobody put him up high enough. So could he be down to 3 or 4 in a redraft in 10 years? Yes, he could. There are some players in this draft that are truly dynamic that have a chance to supersede what he is currently. We're aware of that. But in terms of playoff performers, if we wanted to roll a player over the boards in the next 4 to 5 years, who would it be? It's Viggo Bjorck, and that's why he is where he is.
Yeah, and we say this is about a 5'9" center. So and then people that knows us know what hockey prospect values. Like we value size, we value playoff hockey. So the fact that we have a 5'9" center at number one should be like that should be like a big alarm going. It's like, oh, okay, this kid is legit. So because we have value, size a lot in the past, and you watch the playoffs. Maybe not this year with Carolina, but a lot of years, like size does matter in the playoff. And we still put a 5'9" center number one.
Yeah. Carolina is a bit smaller, but they're still. I mean, Jordan Stahl leading the charge here. He ain't small by any stretch of the imagination. Still some size for sure. But yes, it was shrunk a little bit.
Well, Stankoven,
yeah.
Jackson Blake, Seth Jarvis, Gustisberger, Sean Walker on the back end. Anyway, there's always a different way to build your team, but and I'll finish this with Bjorck. I think whoever drafts him will probably win the draft because he might drop a bit on draft day. Who knows? It's tough to really predict, but like if he's there at 6, 7, 8, whoever drafts him, they're winning the draft. In my opinion, and they're also most likely getting their future captain by taking him because he will be a captain in the NHL for sure. Okay, let's move on to Caleb Malhotra, who's our second-ranked player, second center. Again, we value center a lot. It's probably the most important position. And teams are looking for center. Like half the team half the NHL teams are looking for centers as we speak. So that's why center always go higher in the draft, even though they're not. Sometimes they get overdrafted. We saw it a few times in the past 2 drafts. So Malhotra, similar to Bjorck, very complete 2-way center. Just got started the year. My first viewing of him, I was like, wow, he does play like his dad. He very, very his attention to details was really good. I'm like, okay, well, Manny did coach his son pretty well because he's playing a lot like him. And then with more viewings, we saw, okay, offensively, he's definitely better than his dad. So it feels like every month he just got better and better. The skating got better, the shot got better, the playmaking got better, the hands got better. So, and then he finished the year with like a fantastic playoff run with Brentford. They lost in the semifinal of the OHL. So a lot of things to like here. Again, similar to Bjorck in the sense that he's very complete. I think Bjorck has more upside offensively. That's why he's our number one. But I was watching in the NHL playoff a lot of Anthony Cirelli with Tampa Bay, and I was like, he's definitely better than Cirelli at the same age, and he's probably has a better upside offensively than Cirelli. But I'm thinking like he can be a 70-point center with like very high end defensive game. Probably a guy in his prime that will be mentioned in Selke talk. So he could probably, depending on what your team looks like, maybe he's your number one center. Maybe he's your number 2 center if you have like a really high end number 1 center. But he's going to play a lot of minutes. He can play all kind of situation. Like he can play power play, he will play on a PK. So there's a lot to like here with Malhotra, and the fact that how much better he got this year. He played in the BCHL last year. He was not a big point guys last year in the BCHL, which is a pretty weaker league than the OHL. I think the expectation at the start of the year that he was going to be more of a third line center probably, and then the more we watched, the more the projection got better and better and better. So definitely one guy that if you watch him in October and you watch him in April, you're like, wow, that kid really got better. And that's a bit what you're looking for as a scout. You want those prospects to have like a nice curve, a positive curve. You don't want them to regress. You want them to get better. Then it gets tricky because the progression was so good this year. It's like as he hit his plateau, or there's more to come. Physically, there's some runway here. He's still just under 6'2", but he has a lot of. You can have a few. I could say he could have, probably 20 pounds still to his frame. Like his dad,
Sure,
yeah, his
maybe
dad
more.
was 210, I believe, when he played. So there's a lot of runway and potential here. But sometimes I've noticed this a bit in the past. Some kid in 1 year they improve so much, and then whoops, then they hit a bit of a plateau. Chase Reed, actually, we mentioned in a future episode of our, about the top defenseman of this class. Chase Reed last year improved so much, like it was ridiculous, and then this year was more of the same.
More flat, yeah.
Yeah. I'll give you another example. Alexis Lafreniere. Like I've seen this kid play from 14 to 18. The progression was amazing. And then at 18, he really never got better after. And then we saw what happened with the Rangers. Like he's like
Shane Wright.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
so
same type of thing.
So yes, you want to see those kids get better, but it's always tricky, right? So scouting is hard. Scouting is it can be really tricky. So we love the fact that Malhotra improved so much this year, but then we can't be 100% sure that improvement will continue at the same rate next year. So he's going to be in college, so he's going to play against better player than he did this year. More physically ready. So I think he's going to Boston U, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure it's Boston U. So yeah. So Brad, you want to add a few things here about Caleb Malhotra?
Absolutely, yeah. So to Jerome's point, probably the best curve out of anybody in our top seven players, I would say. That really was one of the reasons that he fortified his position here. Jerome's point, like when we were first evaluating this player, I really thought he was a third line center. Like the skating's a bit rigid, not mechanically overly efficient, like more Ivar Stenberg range, I would say, except a bit bigger frame, but not as good edge work. Not as good edge work as Stenberg or Bjorck for that matter. And then the handling rates where things got very interesting, because the first half of the season, like his hands are all over the map. They would break down more than he would like. And there's wide handling plays. And then there's like wider types of spectrums with types of handle rates, depending on how far you're willing to try to extend your lateral drags. And then there's in tight handling, then there's handling at full speed, right? So, and then there's handling, try to be deceptive around triangles for your shot, so you can try to mask the placement on a goalie and go from far side to short side and vice versa. With Malhotra, all of that was very, very inconsistent. Like his outside, inside deking, his extension dekes, his in tight handling, his lateral dragging, it was all over the map. So it was like, okay, this kid is, Jerome's point, not grown into his frame yet. We're going to have to give him more time to cook, simmer, try to figure out what's going on here. By the end of the season, it started to come together. Come playoff time, it started really materializing. And when I found Jerome, one of the more interesting things about this player is how creative he is. This is a player who's very, very dynamic in terms of trying to use his frame in combination his hands so that he can make unique plays through his triangle, his own triangle, and through his legs. Like, he has no problem doing some bizarre off look backhand between the leg lateral setups that he's exaggerating a fake backhand shot and then going back across the weak side, and then at the same time pressing his frame into the opposing team. So it's interesting because he has a unique puck protection skill set, but it's still kind of its infancy. So to Jerome's point, we have to bet on the fact it's going to come up another level, where admittedly with Stenberg, much more of a finished product. What you see is what you get, and what you get is really good. And then with McKenna, you're talking about an all-time talent. So it's like there is some contrast there where it's like, okay, we are betting a little bit on him filling out here, which we think he will, and that will help him take off from that perspective. The other factor is this is a very intelligent hockey player. I don't think he's as intelligent as Bjorck, but nobody is. But he's right under that. He's right in the same lane, same state area for me as Oliver Suvanto. I think Suvanto and him very similar in terms of intelligence. I would give him the slight edge because he's a more creative player. So I would say he's maybe slightly more intelligent, but pretty similarly ranged there for me. And then when you look at his shot, it's not going to be the hallmark of his game, but it certainly has improved. His catch and release is softer now. Again, he can shift his shooting angle dynamically through coverage. He knows how to mask his release point better than he did when we first saw him in the BCHL. He's certainly improved from that perspective. And then you look at the skating handling combination, it went up. We think it's going to go up another level. We just talked about the shot and the passing. The other factor is that this kid does not stop playing a 200-foot game. I mean, it's right through it's in his blood. It's very similar to his dad. Right? Stays above the puck. He'll go after players. He'll do whatever it takes to try to get the puck back, but he's smart about it. He reminds me a little bit of Adam Sikora from the Rangers, Jerome, with how he operates defensively at the line.
That's a deep cut, Brad.
I'm going deep now. We got to. So it's, Adam Sikora, for everybody listening, was a third-round pick from the Rangers, Cup 2022, I think, who we had a lot of time for. We still do. We still think he's going to be a very useful depth energy piece that can help you in the playoffs long term. And the reason why is he's a very Swiss Army knife style of defender who could bait opposing players at the blue line into taking specific ice he wanted them to. He would draw them and lure them into defensive traps. And that's something that you really want to see because it really speaks to anticipation and wherewithal defensive. The instincts are there. That's Malhotra. Malhotra has a lot of that built into him. So, again, there was a lot of argument here between the top seven. You could make debates for McKenna, Verhoff, Reed, Carroll, Stenberg in the slot instead all day long. It's just for our money, we're always looking for the players who are the most viable in critical situations. He stepped up in the playoffs. He surged. He had the best development curve out of anybody this season. He has a tremendous amount of runway. He's got a good head on his shoulders. He's obviously been coached behind the scenes from his dad a little bit there. That doesn't hurt him. And we just believe he has a chance to be a number one center long term.
And at number 3, we have Gavin McKenna of Penn State. So Brad, obviously a lot of people are curious about our thoughts about McKenna. Likely we'll still go number 1 with Toronto in the draft to be determined, but I would be surprised if they don't go that way. We have number 3. He was also number 3 in our November list. So let's start talking about him. What was your first impression of McKenna this season at Penn State? Because we were really scratching our head a bit in the first half of the season with him because the first half of the season was not so good. Even though I think by the World Junior time he was point per game, but man, we were really not too very confused by the way he was playing at the start of the year with Penn State.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, nightmare fuel, to be honest with you, for us, because you're dealing with an all-time talent, one of the best playmakers we've ever seen when he's playing up to his ability. And he was down, quite frankly, not only was he pedestrian, he was awful. He was really, really not good. Let's start. I think we should start with the psychological makeup here because that's what shocked me the most coming to college. So usually what happens with kids who get anointed generational because they're supposed to be the next great thing in hockey. usually those players are primed in a way to make sure that they understand what hockey is. Okay, like, and what I mean by that, like Sidney Crosby coming up, okay, you could tell real early with him, like he gets it. Everything was clicking, everything was firing mentally. You knew that he had the right mentality. It was overly humble. Very good sign, right? Like just not that, doesn't buy into his own hype. Sidney Crosby didn't buy into his own hype. You can see it. You look at Nathan MacKinnon, I think maybe bought into his hype a bit. Took him time to explode and become what he was supposed to. Took him time to mature. That's the bet here with McKenna. It ain't Crosby out of the gate. This kid's going to need time to mentally mature. And we know that because when you watch him play in college initially, it's like he never has seen a higher level of hockey than junior. That's the only way I can describe it. You know, some players, they're not actually very into actually watching hockey outside of playing it. That's almost the interpretation I got from watching, because he, as you know, Jerome, looked like he was playing on a pond. Like, this player is so talented that I don't think he's ever really thought about the what it means to know what Patrice Bergeron is. What it, for whatever reason, I don't think he's actually followed and watched what Sidney Crosby. Viggo Bjorck's probably studied Crosby for 20 plus, since he came out of the womb. Before Viggo Bjorck was born, Crosby was playing. But I bet you Viggo Bjorck the last decade has been honed in, trying to understand what that player has been doing, trying to execute like that player. I don't see any sort of comparable from McKenna from that perspective. I don't think McKenna actually watches hockey that much. That was my first interpretation. The other was, I don't think he practices anything he's bad at, because he's otherworldly at playmaking, and his handling on paper was spectacular. We'll get to that. But the rest was not only lacking, it didn't exist. Like, this player legitimately doesn't know what it meant to compete. There's levels to compete. So for instance, Ty Lawrence, like we talked about him, the motor and competitive nature's there, and he battles, and the will and the effort is at least there, and he'll engage even if he doesn't know how to at times. McKenna, one of the only players in this class, the reason we gave his compete such a low score, who legitimately actively avoids getting hit, legitimately actively avoids having to go into a battle. This player lets up off the forecheck, will purposely make sure that he doesn't have to engage along the boards, will not fight through checks. What Jerome, remember at the end of the season there when we were laughing because his body language looked so bad during a specific play?
It was that game against Michigan where
that's it.
He's in his own zone, and somehow a Michigan player still is stick, and then he just stopped playing, put his two arms in the air looking at the ref,
his arms up, started yelling.
And then Michigan scored right away.
He just went in the corner because the opposing player on Michigan threw the stick into near the goal line. McKenna stopped playing hockey, started yelling at the ref, went over to pick up his stick, and was going back in there. And I know some of you are like, oh, this is over scouting. It's not, and I'll tell you why. It gives us an understanding of the privilege that he thinks he is deserved. That's an incredible warning sign in any athletic discipline. You do not want to see a kid who's playing into the anointment before it happens. It actually reminds me a lot. This is going to be a really weird comparison, but for some of you who know, it reminds me a little bit of Ronda Rousey's situation back when she was becoming this legendary figure in the UFC, even though she had the worst boxing skills of all time, had never really been tested. Then she gets cracked by Holly Holm, and she disappeared because the facade wore off. She didn't get to be the queen of the world anymore in her mind. She didn't get to be the face of the UFC anymore. She wasn't the female Conor McGregor anymore. And she vanished. The mental makeup of Ronda Rousey was always pretty weak. I get the exact same feeling from McKenna. It's an incredibly dangerous game to play. And I'll tell all of you why. In hockey, you don't see this enough, especially publicly. Behind the scenes, certain people definitely get it. Some don't, but some do. And that's that you really need to know the psychological foundation of what you're drafting if you're going to give a kid who's supposed to be a perceived superstar $13, $14 million a year. Everybody knew that Evander Kane was going to turn his phone into a money line. Okay, everybody saw the pictures of Evander Kane holding up his cash like a phone, and the people who drafted him knew he was going to do it. They did it anyways. Ryan Merkley, okay, this is a kid who had the worst off-ice interviews in history. I'm not saying that they're the same, by the way. McKenna's not the same level of that type of profile. Merkley was extremely easy to suspect that he was never going to play. Let's put it that way. We had him in the 70s, which meant a 6th, 7th round pick. Everybody had him in the 1st round. They didn't take it into consideration. Everybody knew, or they should have known. You have to take.
Some people did not know. I think some people did not.
Maybe. But you know what, Joe?
You're not doing your job if you don't know.
You're right. But do you know what? On the ice, it was there because it was the same body language we see in McKenna, we saw in Merkley. Mm-hmm. Instead of playing hockey, he'd stop playing and go yell at the ref, go yell at somebody in the stands. Same thing. Now, I'm not saying it's the same. It's the same in terms of the managers on the ice, but I'm not saying the kid's as bad off the ice. I'm not suggesting that. I think McKenna is actually more of a kid he's not used to criticism. I think that's apparent. This is the first year he's dealt with it, and he became extremely defensive, which means he's probably an emotional kid. That's not a bad thing. I think emotions are a good thing because it allows you to integrate better with what you're doing. Okay, but I think he did this the wrong way, because what he should have done is like, oh, maybe I am a real talented kid, but maybe there's things I can learn from what this criticism, because it's constructive. We're not here to take down this kid. In fact, this is the only place he'll probably actually hear what he needs to. It's constructive criticism. It's you could be something magnificent if you're willing to buy in. But there was not only would not see a buy-in in terms of his interviews, the media exposure, all that. It was the opposite. He was making excuses he was saying, oh yeah, but I did compete at the U20s. The only game he stood up the U20s positively was against Denmark. And then everybody in me decided to anoint him. Oh yeah, no, it's him. He's the generational guy we always knew. No, he was terrible at the U20s. You know why we know that? Because when the games were on the line, he folded just like he did in college. Jerome, how bad was he in college hockey? In the playoffs.
No, like that's one of my issues. Like, I have not seen him play great in a big game that matters
in a
long time.
Not happened. Since the U18s, which I saw live, ironically. The best game I've seen him play, I was there live for. I saw him playing it. But and I saw him in practice there live. And admittedly, I watched every single team in practice during that tournament. He was the most dynamic player by him. It was hilarious how much more talented he was than everybody else.
It's not
even James Higgins. Head to head, it wasn't even close.
The talent is not the issue, Brad.
No, it's certainly not the issue. But it becomes the issue because when you're that talented, you don't get it sometimes with the rest. You don't see what you need to see with the rest. And that's one of the defining, in terms of the psychological profile, there is so much missing. And then where's he going, Jerome? What market's he going to? The highest pressure cooking market in the NHL. And everybody's like, oh yeah, he's going to be fine there. Yeah, he'll just fit right in. What are people talking about? Like, why do people just pretend that this is the reality of what's going to happen? It's the nightmare situation for the Leafs, for him, for everybody involved. I hope he does really well, to be honest with you, because it's better for the sport. Yeah. But psychologically, oh man, there's so much missing.
We'll see. I mean, he has a great group around him. Like CA does a great job, so they can work with him and maybe understanding maybe some of the weaker part of his game that need work. Because I remember before the World Junior, he was getting interviewed by TSN and all those guys, and he was like, I don't understand people criticizing me for my compete level, and I'm like, well, I don't know. And
doesn't know what it means.
And then he said that a few times during the tournament, and then they did like a doc on him. I think it was TNT, and he's talking about his play at the World Junior. And he's like, I thought I played great. I had 2 points per game. And I'm like, okay, so there's a very contrast way of looking at this. Bjorck completely gets it, and then McKenna does not get it.
Doesn't get it.
Maybe he will at some point, but right now, he doesn't. Like, you do not. The points don't matter. It's the semifinal against the Czech. He had a bad game. Him and Michael Hage had a bad game. They lost Brady Martin on that line to an injury, but once Brady Martin was out, they had nothing going. And this is the type of game where you needed McKenna to take over, and he didn't. That doesn't mean he's not going to be a good NHLer. Celebrini at the World Junior, I think Canada lost in the quarterfinal, so it doesn't affect. But we didn't add any issue with how Celebrini was playing. He was just Canada was just not that good. So there's a lot of mental maturity that will need to happen with McKenna. He's not going in, and as we assume Toronto will pick him. Like it's not going to be the easiest market to deal with this. Hopefully, he has good people around him on that team and the coaching staff and the management, because there's going to be a lot of eyes on him.
Well, Jerome, I'll ask you, because everybody listening to this, a lot of Leafs fans listen to this. Do you think he could play in the NHL next year? And if not, why?
I think he will play in the NHL, but I don't think that's
probably not the smart move, though, is it? Like
developmental, where he will. I mean, I did. If you go back a year ago, I questioned him going to Penn State.
Right.
I get it. Like they had the most money, fine, but they have not produced any quality NHLer. The roster was average, so like he didn't have any high-end teammates to play with. A few like Serrato, we like Serrato, but not. He could have gone anywhere. He could have gone anywhere. You could have gone Michigan State, and play with much better players that could have helped him. So,
well, Jerome, speak to that, because this is a kid. One thing that's interesting about his game, we mentioned earlier the Viggo Bjorck. He will defer at the right times. He'll incorporate his teammates. He'll make his teammates better. One thing with McKenna, he really overcommits his skill. Still to this, that was one of the big issues. Is he actually turns the puck over relative to how intelligent his playmaking is, more than people would think. Like this is an open, especially in the first half. That's one of the reasons we were a lot lower, because like the risk, there was no mitigation of risk with his offensive attack. Like this is a player who does a tremendous amount of multi-touch and open ice handling. And fair enough, you got to take advantage of your skill set. But he would run himself into dead areas. He would run himself into defensive coverage where he's dealing with 2 to 3 different players coming at him. He has no options. He's losing the puck. And then we just talked about Toronto. He doesn't compete hard enough. Now, I will give him 2 things, though. 2 things. One, in the game against the Czechs, the U20, since we're beating them up so bad, I want to talk about slightly. Feel bad for Tyler Lawrence too, because I really hope these kids play. These are, they're not bad kids. Like Tyler Lawrence seems like a good kid. McKenna, I think, is just a bit defensive. I think he can mature through it. But at the Czechs U20, he took a terrible penalty late. Right. And he had that body language issue, but he reset himself in the box. He came out, he flew out of the gate, and he actually attacked correctly and put himself in a high danger area and almost scored. He actually had a really good shot. I was like, we need that. The problem is you get that with Schaefer and Celebrini every shift. You get this. The reason this stood out to me is because it was the only time in the game he saw it. And that happens with back checking sequences in college. Okay, if he turns the puck over, he will turn on the afterburners. But guess who else would turn off the afterburners on the back check when he turned things over? And it never. Dominic Bach. Dominic Bach hid from us because of J20. I remember Jerome and the DL. He would skate really aggressively backwards when he would turn the puck over, but he wouldn't engage still. So it was like he was masking. It was like he was pretending he was supposed to be doing the things he was. I feel like there's a bit of that with McKenna, but at least he's willing to put on the afterjets to try to make up some lost ice. And I do think he improved slightly defensively as the season progressed towards the second half, I would say. He did occasionally use his stick better. He anticipated slightly better. It's nowhere near where Bjorck, Stenberg, Suvanto, even Cullen, it's nowhere near to that level in terms of defensive anticipation and understand having base instincts for it. But at least it was on display where he's trying to do something we had not seen previously. And maybe we should turn that to the handling ability, because I did an enormous deep set. We talked about this with Mathis Preston, but one of the big things, and bring it back to you with this, because I think it's important we talk about how little he looks to attack inside. And one of the reasons why has to do, obviously he's 5'11", $175, hasn't really physically developed, played in college, he's going to get overpowered a little bit. That you have to factor that in. But in terms of his handling rates, The hands are spectacular, and he can do what we want in terms of being able to reverse the pivoting base of the defense, be able to turn the defense inside out, making sure that their weight transfers are taken advantage of. He can do all those things, but he doesn't actually gain ground as often as you would think with his hands. He did streamline them a little bit as the season progressed. I think that was one of the main reasons his production went up, is because he started streamlining his attack slightly more, stopped hot dogging, stopped doing the fluff, stopped doing the Trevor Zegras 3-point plays as often, and started actually showing himself that he can dial in offensively and just attack naturally without having to do all this crazy handling. And it worked better because it put himself in higher percentage chances more often. That said, Jerome, what did we talk about with him at the end of the season in the playoffs? He was drowned to the outside every game. His shot rates were horrific in terms of getting the high danger areas. So let's put it this way: if he was a Cole Caulfield level shooter, we couldn't have this discussion. It wouldn't matter. No. What are we talking? It looks like Gretzky when he's passing a puck, Caulfield when he's shooting a puck. Nobody cares. It doesn't even matter what he does off the puck. Fair enough. He's gonna be a liability at 5-on-5. Nobody cares because the amount of production he would put up, then it wouldn't matter. He put up 140 points a season. You don't care. But that's not the case. His shot rate and where he shoots and how little he's willing to go on the inside actually really matters. And what's even stranger to me, Jerome, is I think his shooting mechanics are actually pretty good. Just can't take advantage of them as often, minus the wheelhouse. Maybe that's something we can discuss.
Yeah.
It's the only weakness he has on the power play. Is the wheelhouse one time is not great.
We're going to talk about like Stenberg right after, but Stenberg is a better shooter than him, more dynamic. But when it's all said and done with McKenna in the NHL, he's going to make a team's power play so much more dynamic
instantly.
You look at Toronto, like okay, we're assuming he goes there, and we assume Austin Matthews will stay there, and then they just traded for Darren Radish. So to start, and you have Nylander, and who knows what happens. Who knows unless they trade him, but
we'll see.
That power play could cook. You have Matthews as a shot option, Radish as a bomb from the point. So those are ingredients that could work well.
Really help him. True.
For McKenna, because he can do whatever he can do. What he does best is pass the puck. He can have like the worst game ever, and he will finish with 3 assists because his passing is ridiculous. So
that level,
we can be as critical as we just been for the last 20 minutes.
There's a reason he's still 3.
Yeah.
There's only so far. Like Dax and Rudolph of the defense, only so far you can drop him. We don't love his game, as you can imagine. We don't love McKenna's game either. You can't drop the kids too far if they're that gifted. That's where there's a conundrum in terms of the placement. It's like, okay, I say this in the book, like, Oliver Suvanto, I way prefer his game. Wyatt Cullen, I prefer his game. Malhotra, Stenberg, Bjorck, I take all of them in terms of what they bring to the table. But at the end of the day, McKenna's probably a 100-point player. It's just where you could really debate moving him back, how much power play points relative to even strength, how many goals relative to assists. Yeah. I see a 25-30 goal scorer who puts up 70 assists, probably 70, 75 power play points, like legitimately might break records on the man advantage, like just ridiculous specialization. But this comes back to philosophy as well. Like Jerome mentioned earlier, like we look for the centers first. You look for the players who will give you playoff performances first. That's what you put at the top of your draft. Your number 1D, your number 1 center, your drivers, your dictators, the mature players, the players who've already shown that they can do it. Those are usually kids you're looking for. This is a soft, immature perimeter playmaking winger who specializes on the man advantage. That is very atypical for a team to look at that and go, that's a franchise talent. Right? That's not, a franchise player. He is the way we describe him in the book is he's a generational passer. He is not a generational player. Yeah. That's something to think and reflect on long term.
Yeah. So I think that's going to wrap up McKenna, unless you want to add more stuff. But I think we have talked a lot about.
We'll bring up maybe more during the live draft show. Once he gets selected, we can go into some areas where we can see his improvements coming, and maybe where he can make us look bad long term. We'll do that.
I'll finish at the combine. He did really well at the combine with the testing and interview wise. Like we did not hear like anything bad about him. So So A+ for his combine. I still wish he went to the World Championship. Um, I know maybe the ice time was maybe the question mark. That's why he didn't go. Canada was pretty deep, but not even to compare him to Stenberg and Bjork there. Just have him play with Sidney Crosby, Celebrini, Tavares, O'Reilly, and just learn from them. That's to me, that's the only reason I wanted him to go there. Just be surrounded by some of the best leader the NHL has. And so that's the bad part for me. I mean, he might have not got the ice time, and people might have said, "Oh, Stenberg is better," and maybe Stenberg is better when it's all said and done. But just for the growth of McKenna as becoming a real hockey player, and you have like those guys on your team, he could have learned so much from them. Even just practicing, just being with them on a day-to-day basis. It's a long tournament, Brad. It's a 3 weeks tournament, so it's like you're gonna be there with 20 plus days with those guys. That's the thing that I wish he went because of that. But anyway, can't do anything about this right now. Stenberg, our fourth ranked prospect, Brad. He started the year on fire. I remember you and I had a discussion. I told you I don't think he's in my top five, and I think you thought I was playing a game with you.
I was like, have you seen him? Have you seen him?
Are we watching the same player? So but he's been his first half of the season in the SHL was, amazing. He was just under a point per game when he got to the World Junior. Funny enough, his World Junior tournament was in the first half of the tournament was pretty average, I would say.
The worst we've seen him. The worst we saw him this season.
And then the last two games, the semifinal and final, he was, the best player on the ice in those two games. So, but then the second half of the season, like it was more difficult. Like he slowed down quite a bit, just production wise. Like his production was way down. Bjork only had 1 point less than him in the second half of the season. So when people think we're crazy ranking Bjork,
production needs context. Production always needs context for sure.
Yeah. And then I'll say this: I thought he got better in the playoff with Frölunda, and then he had a good World Championship. Playing with Sweden, Lucas Strayman, Viggo Bjorck on that top line. So overall, like a very good season by him, even though like the second half of the season was a bit.
Did he break records, Jerome? Did he have the highest point per game average for an 18-year-old in SHL?
Possibly.
Was he? I can't remember now.
Yeah, I have to check.
I think who would beat him out. The Sedin twins? Where was Sedin twins? I'm trying to remember their production.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, it's not too important. But yeah, Stenberg, I think we have mentioned it a few times in different videos. We just think he is very, very, very good right now. We just think the runway there's not much runway here. But it doesn't really matter too much for him because he is really good right now. It's just sometimes we're going to look at Bjork. Okay, Bjork has more runway. Even McKenna has more runway. Physically, he has more runway.
Malhotra, all of them have more runway, yeah.
But I think he's the most ready for the NHL for next year. So I think he will have the bigger impact next year in the NHL. He's an older prospect, so it makes sense that physically he's more mature. His game is more mature. So there's a lot to like here. As mentioned previously, we think he's a better shooter, better goal scorer than McKenna. He's smart. He competes. The playmaking is quite good too. It's not on the McKenna level, but it's quite good too. He's also physically a lot more mature than McKenna. Like he wins a lot of battles. He's really strong on his skate. Watching the World Junior, that was the most obvious thing. Watching Stenberg and McKenna was losing a lot of battles one-on-one, not strong on his skates. Stenberg, even though even his play was average at the start, he was still winning a lot of battles. Like he was not getting out muscle. So you could see like this kid is mature and he's ready for the NHL. So we think he's I would say easily, I would say a 70-point player at the NHL level. Probably can score, I would say something around 35. Maybe my challenge for 40 goals at some point.
Yeah.
There's a lot to like here. The skating was maybe the question mark that we had at some point, but it's fine. He's not an explosive skater, but McKenna is not an explosive skater.
It was interesting, Jerome. Is this the first draft you can remember where like the top 5 forwards are none of them are actually that high end in terms of their skating?
Bjorck is not a high end skater. Malhotra is not a high end skater. McKenna, Stenberg,
Cullen's a good skater, but his skating's getting overinflated publicly. It's good. It's not exceptional.
So nobody in that group is like an elite skater. So
no,
yeah,
it's very strange. It's like one of the rarer things. Usually, you always end up with some very high end skater up there, but that's not the case.
It doesn't matter too much for Stenberg because he's so smart and so talented. And the compete is there. So there's just nothing really wrong with him as a prospect, honestly. It's just, are the guys that have more runway gonna surpass him in a few years, or maybe they won't. So that's the tricky, and that's the projection game that we have to play as a scout. But that's
does William Eklund's lack of progression here, does that factor? Is because William Eklund, we had a ton of time for him in the SHL in his draft season. There was a bit of overlap there, a bit undersized, but incredibly intelligent, skilled, and the projection we had for him hasn't materialized. And you look at NHL staff, the last thing they care about are small wingers. Like, that's not what they're after. So there could be a fall effect that maybe Matvei Michkov-esque if it gets crazy. Like, don't get me wrong, I think he goes to the top 4 or 5. But it's more possible that type of fall occurs with him than it would with a lot of these other players we're talking about, I think.
I mean, we can do our best trying to project what the draft is going to look like, but it's usually like, remember one year, all those defensemen dropping, and that was 2024. Like, what a shock! Like Bume dropping, Dickinson dropping, and we all thought like those guys might like go in the top 5, top 6, and the defenseman that goes high is Yakimchuk. That we didn't really predict that one. So we can try our best to predict like what the draft is gonna go. NHL team, they'll do whatever they want with their pick, So, Stenberg, you want to add anything, Brad?
Sure, let's do it.
We definitely like him. He's 4th on our list. Even though like the second half of the season was a bit,
up and down.
But I think he finished really strong at the World Championship, so he kept his top 5 spot here.
He did remind us. So I mean, I've seen comparables of Tim Stützle. No, that's not correct. The reason why is Tim Stützle, an elite skater. This kid, not an elite skater. So the big thing with this player is kind of an odd comparison, but I think it's valid in some ways. Is he does remind me a little bit of a Swedish Nikita Klepov. Reminds me a little bit of Klepov. The reason I'm saying that is they're both undersized, they're both average skaters, but they're both incredibly intelligent, both dynamic, and they kind of operate in the same way in terms of using their poise, their calculation, and extending their operating windows and timing everything between those windows, and taking full advantage of what's given to them. That's kind of how both of them think the game. Klepov also looks to drive more than you would typically see in an undersized, immature winger, and just like Stenberg. I think there is actually some overlap, it's one of the reasons that we love both. But yeah, Stenberg for us, like, let's go back to the skating a little bit, maybe. So, like, if you look at McKenna, admittedly, like, he is very nimble. He's dexterous. His 3-point area quickness is there. He can come out of turns fast. That's where McKenna has a bit of an advantage over a player like Stenberg or Bjorck or Malhotra, etc. Where Stenberg differentiates himself is his ability to use his edge work to manipulate defensemen into taking the wrong lanes against him. So he gains ground more through neutral zone than you would expect, and that allows him to drive his possession rates up because he can enter the offensive zone in possession more often you would think, because usually what happens is undersized wingers who don't skate that well, they can't be neutral zone entry possession drivers. Stenberg still can be. That's a bit surprising to me, but it's true. Klepov also projects to be able to do that. Jack Quinn in his draft year. Now, he's been injured a lot, hasn't broken out to the degree we thought yet, but he's had stretches here. We'll see if he can still develop. But Jack Quinn, that was something we thought Jack Quinn would be able to do because of his ability to be poised and operate with his extended windows, because of his handling rates and his spatial awareness, his anticipation, his ability to get behind coverage in advance. That was all very similar to what we're seeing with Stenberg. And again, Klepov. So there's just, in a draft of uncertainty, Bjorck and Stenberg both really stand out as very certain picks. And to Jerome's point, I think one of the reasons the defense might fall in drafts is because when you project them out, guess what? They miss more. Wingers don't miss nearly as much as defense when you're attempting to project them out. So that's one advantage that Stenberg significantly has over most other players in this draft class. To close, I would say that he actually falls a little bit into one category of Gleb Pugachev, which is that I think he actually had a bit of a bad puck luck in certain performances with his shot. His shot's better than you would think based off the scoring rates that we've seen. This player can shoot a puck better than people think. I didn't think I thought his shot looked way better last year than this season. I don't know why exactly that is. I don't know if it's because the environment was different with SHL, where he didn't get as much time and space in terms of being able to get a shot. It took him time to adapt that. I don't know if it was a bit, I know some of it was bad puck luck, because I remember several games were being like, oh, he could have easily scored a goal or two here, and he didn't. Much like Pugachev, but obviously different circumstances environmentally with the MHL relative to the SHL. But yeah, I would say, like Jerome's point, 70 points, you can make an argument maybe like average, he even gets above that, might get to 80 on season, maybe peak 90.
I mean, it depends who he plays with. So
who he plays with depends on a whole lot of factors.
That's the context.
Yeah, definitely matters on context. But he does have the capacity to be one of the top scorers in this draft. So I'm trying to say, long term, it's still there. Viggo Bjorck, not as talented, just under the talent of Stenberg. Hands are slightly less than Stenberg's. Shot is slightly mechanically worse than Stenberg's. The wheelhouse is considerably worse, but the playmaking rates, I would give the edge to Bjorck by a bit. So there's a bit of contrast there in terms of how they operate offensively.
Yeah. Okay. That will do it for Stenberg. So that's our top 4 forwards in the draft: Bjorck, Malhotra, McKenna, Stenberg. A lot of debates, honestly. I can say.
Sometimes they're coming up. They're at an end.
Stenberg, McKenna. Like I can say, like me on my personal list, like Stenberg was ahead of McKenna, but it was
Same.
like a really back and forth with like our staff. All right, let's go with our 5th ranked forward, Wyatt Cullen from the NTDP, who's off to University of Minnesota next season. This is quite an intriguing player who really got better as the season went on. I was reading something about him at the Combine that he has grown 7-8 inches in the past 2 years. That's ridiculous.
It's like Chris Tanev levels, isn't it? Didn't Tanev grow like 7 or 8 inches?
Like that's crazy. And he's that good, and he has not like suffer. I can't even imagine growing that much.
He did have his injury history as a result of maybe his growth spurt a little bit with his hip flexors.
Yeah, the injury, yeah, but I'm saying like his actual on ice game.
Oh yeah.
So sometime I'll say this: he looks a bit like Jack Hughes on the ice, the good and the bad. Sometimes, like the talent is very not the skating, but the stick handling. Yeah,
magic mittens.
Yeah, the shooting mechanics also is really good. But sometimes you will hold on to the puck too long, and then that results in turnover. Very Jack Hughes like.
Yeah.
Perfect example of that. You watched the U18. I think it was against Germany, if I'm not mistaken. over time, he tried to do too much on his own, lost the puck, and then pretty sure it was Germany. But anyway, the opposing team scores, and that was a big upset. Like USA was not supposed to lose that game. So there's some really good part with Cullen, some part that is like bother you, but he has so much talent. He's super young too, Brad. Like he's I believe a September birthday. So like, what happens if he keeps growing like another inch or two?
Like, what we want is what I guarantee us the NHL staff would take too. Yeah.
So like we have him as our 5th ranked forward. He's number 9 overall. There's a scenario here that he might be even higher in the redraft in a few years.
Absolutely.
So, very good hockey player. And I think where the team that picks him will be really quite happy. He is very I would say physically immature, and that's probably a good thing. He has a lot of. We often talk about runway. That kid's got so much runway coming up for him. He's going to great school, a great hockey program. So I imagine he'll play 2 years in college, and then he'll be ready for prime time after. Mm-hmm. But that kid's got he's got some serious talent. If you get him in the draft and he's at, I don't know, we have him 9. Let's say he goes 9, 10, 11, 12 in the draft. That's a hell of a pick, I think. So we really like him. Like he really improved this season. Brad, you want to add some stuff on Wyatt Cullen?
Sure. I mean, offensively, his instincts are that of like a 5'7" forward in the good areas, meaning like he's very deceptive. He's smart. He uses feints. He's very good at manipulating opposing defenses so that he can be slippery when he needs to. And that's because, he used to be small. Now he's growing into this new frame. And admittedly, that meant some struggles off the puck in terms of how understanding how to engage correctly. But the thing with him, Jerome, that really stood out was like his peak performances in college to me. You watch those, you're like, oh my God, there's so much here. Like there is so much potential in this player if things go right. He brings everything. In those performances, I thought he brought everything. He even incorporated his teammates better than I thought he did at the end of the season. So it's one of those situations where I think the playmaking, specifically with the weak side playmaking and the ability to understand advanced passing plays under heavy coverage scenarios where he has to delay, hold the puck for a bit longer so that he can wait for his trailing options to come and cycle plays, etc. Like, I think that's all there. It's just a bit, as you said, like it's in its infancy to a degree where you have to project him further out. For my money, this is the way I told everybody on our staff about it. I really think he's right there with Malhotra. I think they're back to back. On my list, they are back to back. I think they're extremely close. And the reason why is because even though Malhotra has a ton of runway, Cullen, you could argue, has more. Cullen's younger. Cullen's a better skater. Cullen's a better puck handler. Cullen has better shooting mechanics. You're like, okay, a lot of things are happening here where long-term Cullen could be the better player. Where Malhotra catches up is that he had the better, more consistent season. He produced a whole lot more, albeit on a very good team, the Bulldogs and the O. And when you look at his 200-foot game, it's already extremely polished where Cullen needs a lot more work when it comes to that aspect. Malhotra has shown like a very mature pro-style game where Cullen is still junior tendencies to a degree. So that's some of the give and take there. But yeah, I'm with you in a redraft. Like if Cullen stays a natural center, I mean, Stenberg's a 70-point winger, as you suggested. Cullen's a 70-point center. It really gets closer. This is where drafting and scouting is extremely difficult. You get some kids, you go, that's a hockey player. Stenberg is guaranteed to play in the NHL. We think we know exactly how he's going to do it, and you just plug and place him. But then you look at Cullen, and it's like, oh, hang on now. This is a center. He's a better skater. There's a tremendous amount of runway. His curve is very good. Well, it gets tight. It gets extremely tight. So that's some of the back and forth with Cullen. And long term, don't be shocked at all in a redraft if he ends up in the top 5, 6, 7 spots there.
Yeah, I'll finish with this. Watching him this year, we have to talk about his teammates on the program. He didn't have much help. Okay. Like how many times I've seen him set up Casey Mutrin for like a sure goal in, in case Simon will find a way to not score. Like he created a lot of scoring chance for his teammates that they didn't always finish. You mentioned his games against college team. I'll mention the CHL USA challenge that they have with the NTDP.
Mhm.
I thought he was phenomenal.
He
And
was real good there. Yeah.
he was the best player on the ice for USA, in my opinion, in those two games. So, you know, when we watch like the NTDP play, I don't even care about how they do against the USHL team. It's mostly against uh, NCAA team, and then now we can add like those CHL, two exhibition games as a a great way to tell about how good some of those prospects are. And Colin did really well in those games. Victor Plant also played well in those two games.
Yeah, he did.
So yeah, so that's gonna wrap it up on Wyatt Cullen, and we wanted to finish with one more prospect, Oliver Suvanto, who maybe he's not getting enough respect out there.
Not getting enough love, everyone. This is the most underrated, for my money, most underrated center in this class by a mile.
So Suvanto, we have him rank 13. So we have Pugachev above him. So but we did talk about Pugachev in a previous video, so you can look for it in the our second video we did. But Suvanto, again, another player born in September, so he's super young. He will turn 18 in September. Center with size, high compete, underrated hands. His playmaking is really underrated. That's probably
Extremely underrated.
the strong part of his offensive game. At this point, not much of a finisher, not much of a scorer. We're hoping that will improve with times. He's a really safe player for the NHL, I find. Like I'm not as high on him as, let's say, Brad. Like I think he can be an elite third line center, and that's the worst version of Suvanto for me. But he could be a second line center if everything goes right. Remember, he's super young and he's smart and he can really pass a puck. And he's a physical power forward. So there's a lot of things here to like. And he played full time pretty much all year in the Liga this season. Not exactly an easy league to play for a 17 years old. Also, like some games he was not getting that much ice time. I guess Brad will also admit like the lack of goals by him was a bit a concern. Not in the Liga necessarily, but he played in the U20 league in the playoff. Didn't score goals in 14 games, I believe. His U18, I think he scored one goal. But overall, I did like his tournament because of his playmaking. I thought he was finding guys, really well in the old zone. So I'm still undecided if he's like more of a high end third line center or like a second line center. Time will tell. But even if he's just a third line center, like if he's Jordan Stahl, are we mad? Are we mad with that pick? I don't think so. So I don't know. He's, as I said, he's 13 on our list. We think he's and the best is yet to come, I think, for that player. So Brad, you want to rant a bit about Suvanto here as our last player we're gonna talk about today?
By all means, ranting is what I specialize in. Some of these players have specialization. That's my specialization, ranting. So Suvanto, yeah, I think he's just super I've seen him like compared to like Ilya Morozov publicly. I'm like, in what world is that the comparison? Morozov is a prototypical power forward who puts his head down, charges the net, doesn't see the ice well, and creates havoc, and that still has value. But Suvanto is one of the most sophisticated playmakers in this entire class. He is a brilliant playmaker at times, and he did it under very high-pressure situations in Liga as a true 17-year-old, one of the youngest centers in this class. Can make very sophisticated passing plays under duress there. And very much like Hemming in one way, Jerome, they can blend a hybrid style of game where they can outthink the opponent using their vision, but they can also just completely run through players because of their power games. That's where Suvanto it totally differentiates himself from any other prospect in this class, because he's the only true power playmaking center available, I think, unless you can correct me with some other names. But the style of game he plays isn't so dissimilar to Seamus Ignatavicius off the puck. These are very, very impressive defensive-minded players who anticipate advanced plays. They anticipate plays in transition. They understand how to break down cycles. They know how to transition and positionally switch with their defensemen. They know how to positionally switch with their center. In Ignatavicius' case, and Suvanto, obviously, he's the natural center. Now, to Jerome's point, two things. One, he mentioned that the handling rates are underrated. They're definitely underrated. Like, this kid actually has like some tremendous touch. He just didn't get to use it as often as you would typically see because of the situation he was in for most of the year. I also admit the curve isn't in the direction it was Malhotra. Malhotra enters the playoff surges. Unfortunately, we felt Suvanto fell flat there and didn't score enough, nearly the degree you would look for in U20 Saru at this level. Now, that said, in some of his performances where he didn't produce, he still looked very good. He still could have had 2 or 3 points. That really matters to us. As long as we see the projection, he's going to the high danger areas, he's doing the right things, making the right plays, that will translate. The other factor is, for a player who's not good at shooting off the rush, doesn't have good footwork, doesn't have good shooting mechanics, doesn't have good bottom hand activation like Pogača, for instance, a contrast does, or Cullen, who also has very good bottom hand activation and dexterous wrist. This player he knows he's not a good shooter, and you can tell he knows he's not a good shooter because of how he operates with his shot volume. It's all low end volume relative to any other shooter player we've mentioned today. And the other factor is he shoots only specifically if he's very in tight to the net. That, however, is okay because you aren't stopping him from getting there. You're not going to stop this kid ever from getting that front. The way he will score is very, very similar to Seamus Ignatavicius. I'm going to keep contrasting because Ignatavicius, though I would argue Ignatavicius is actually a better shooter off the rush by a bit at this stage, it's all going to be the net front redirects. It's all going to be the trajectories of figuring out where the puck is before other people off of rebounds and bank options. That's how Ignatavicius is going to get most of his scoring done. He's smart. He knows how to slip coverage. He knows how to get behind coverage. He's big, so you can't box him out easily. He's relentless. They're competitive. So you take those elements together, and then you look at Suvanto. I would argue Suvanto has even better hands, Jerome. That's going to help him in tight when it comes to trying to manipulate the opposing goalies and manipulate the opposing D in tight. And he's one of the most competitive players in the draft. So those factors we think will help make up the compensation for having very little in the way of shot quality. So he might still get 15 to 20 goals. It would be like Thomas Holmstrom net front from Detroit there, old school. And that's fine. He's just going to be a bit unique with how he does his thing. But you look at the skating base, even, Jerome, I would say it has a bit more runway than some of these other kids we've talked about because he is 6'3.5", 200 plus pounds, very young. When he gets up to his gear, his top gear, it's not bad at all. It's just a bit janky right now. But the jankiness, just like with Verhoff, we're betting on the jank factor decreasing a little bit as the rate of progression goes up as they continue to develop as players. So he's completely misunderstood. It comes down to hockey sense as the main culprit. And to be honest with you, publicly and admittedly privately, I think that's where a lot of people don't really understand hockey sense very well. I think it's why Albert Smits is rated too highly. It's why Oliver Suvanto is rated too low. And you have to weight it. So the other thing I'll say is that, again, this kid can do things differently. He can play a power game on one shift and then out finesse you on the next and outthink you. So he again, very similar to Hemming for me, Jerome, from that perspective. And I remember when coming out of the link, did you have it 2-2 like I did? I thought Savannah was better in 2 of the games. Hemming was better in the other 2.
I definitely like Hemming better coming out of the Elanco than Suvanto. And now it's like Suvanto is ranked 12 and
Hemming's back further.
19. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And a part of that probably we attribute to the fact that in college, Hemming never really got to get his footing there. And
he didn't play hockey for like 4 months. 5
The
months.
contractual dispute, that was a crazy situation. So yeah, that has to be factored in too. But yeah, he brings what every team wants: a big power center that can make his teammates better in a multitude of ways, and plays a full 200-foot game, and showing a tremendous amount of maturity relative to his age. It's very rare. He'll go higher than people think. He's better than people think, and you can clip me for that one.
Oh, they will. All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up, Brad. So thanks, everyone, for watching. This was like our top forward video. So we recap some of our top forwards. We got one more video coming up this week. It's going to be our top defenseman. Then after that, we have the live draft show Friday night. And also, we actually have decided to do a live show Saturday also. So check our YouTube channel. We're gonna be there Friday night and also I guess Saturday morning during the day, talking about picks in round 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I don't know how long we're gonna go in day 2.
No, we're going long, Jerome. You're not going anywhere. I'm keeping you around. This is the thing for everybody. This is the thing, everybody. Like for those that have just gotten to know us, or the first video you've ever seen of us, one thing that we should tell you is, like, we're both a bit crazy, and we know that because we're both international sweepers. Meaning, Jerome and myself, we legitimately cover basically every junior league in a draft. So we know more players than most people. So we'll be able to break down those players in the back half more than most can. And that's, we're hoping to give everybody a better detail with a player that will get drafted first time in 24 years out of Hungary, Doman Christoph Zongoff. Most of you are like, who is that? He'll get drafted, and when he does, we'll break it down, and there will be a whole lot of that. So that's we'll make sure too to base it off the team. Like, if the team fit makes sense, what they bring, type of projection that in terms of how much runway, how much time they might need, we'll bring it all to you.
Yeah. So last year we did it. We only did the Friday, and then I remember like the Saturday we're like, well, maybe we should have done Saturday. We have a lot to discuss. We know a lot of players, so please join us. I know the one that did it last year really had a good time, chatting with us. We answer a lot of questions too during the coverage, so don't be shy. So yeah, that's gonna be it for us for today. So thanks everyone for watching, and we'll talk to you guys soon with the top defenseman and the big time live draft show Friday and Saturday. So thanks everyone.
Thanks everyone.